Please welcome our final speaker of the day, Mr. Peter Schiff.
Thank you. You know, it's actually not hard to see into the future if you just have an understanding of economics. The problem is so many people don't. Inevitable. I said this from the beginning, right? I said it when they launched the very first round of quantitative easing, that they had, checked us into a monetary Roach Motel, that there was no way out. Once they went down this line, that we were in for the duration. You live by QE, you die by QE. I said we'd have more QEs than Rocky movies. And I think they had 6 of those. And of course, they got progressively worse. And so I think QE4 is going to be even worse than the last rounds. And ultimately, and I see this thing is flashing, ultimately, where we are headed is to a dollar crisis. And I know right now, and over the last several years, the dollar has rallied. Why has the dollar rallied? Because everybody is convinced that the Fed's monetary policy worked, right? Everybody is waiting for the Fed to raise interest rates. And it's that fear or that anticipation of tighter monetary policy coming out of the Fed that has caused the dollar to rise. The market is trying to price that in. They've believed all the hype and all the propaganda that this bubble is a real recovery. But the same people were fooled by the phony recovery of the housing bubble years or of the dot-com years. And so when people realize that, wait a minute, this is not the end of it, right? Quantitative easing isn't over, right? The Federal Reserve is not finished printing money. They're just getting warmed up. That the lion's share of the printing is in front of us. That the Fed's balance sheet is not going to shrink. It's going to start expanding again. It's not going back to 1 trillion. It's going up to 10 trillion. That there's no way to stop this. Because if the Fed ever let interest rates go up, the party would end. They would have to admit that they're insolvent. You have all kinds of countries now around the world admitting that they can't afford to pay their bills. Well, we can't pay our bills either. We've got more bills than they do. It's just that our creditors haven't figured it out yet, so our interest rates are still low. But if interest rates went up, we would have to make the same acknowledgement because there is no way that we can service this mountain of debt at a market rate of interest. So the Federal Reserve is going to have to do everything it can to keep this party going. And what's going to end it is going to be the coming dollar crisis. Because then when people realize it's QE infinity, it's 0% interest rates forever, the dollar's going to turn. Prices are going to rise precipitously in the United States, not financial prices, but the prices of real goods and services. And the Federal Reserve's 2% so-called inflation ceiling is not going to be a ceiling because they're going to let it go to 3, they're going to let it go to 4, they're going to let it go to 5, and they're going to first say it's good for us. They're going to say, oh, we dodged a bullet. At least we didn't have a lower cost of living, right? At least we saved us from deflation, right? So they'll congratulate themselves for having saved us from that. And then they'll say it's transitory and, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how high inflation goes because there's nothing these guys can do to stop it because they're powerless to do it because the only way to do it would be to raise interest rates dramatically and they don't have the stomach for that. And so when the markets realize that inflation runs out of control, then we get that dollar crisis, we get a precipitous plunge in the dollar, and then we're going to have no choice. The market is going to force the Fed to do the right thing because if it doesn't, right, then it turns the dollar into monopoly money. Then we run into a hyperinflation, which would be the complete worst case scenario. Hopefully we can avoid that, but we have to make sure that the Fed ultimately does the right thing and the nation does the right thing on the eve of that dollar crisis, because otherwise, look, the only solution I'm going to have for the young millennials is going to be emigration.
Today, the Federal Reserve is more powerful than ever before and has gotten more powerful as a result of what has gone on.
Well, the Fed, the central bank, needs to be powerful to do what it's assigned to do. At the same time, the Fed is very transparent. When I was there, we added press conferences. We added all kinds of economic projections. You, of course, are quite aware of that. And the Fed is very accountable to Congress and is always there testifying, providing as much information as needed. So yes, central banks are powerful in the world today, but they are also accountable to the public, and they should be.
The balance sheet, though, has widened so much. Do you worry about the Fed's ability to unwind that balance sheet now at what, plus trillion dollars.
Yeah, it's pretty serious money, no question. But I don't think this is a major problem. So first of all, the Fed's balance sheet, as big as it is kind of the same share of the total national output as in other countries, in UK and other places. But also, when the time comes to unwind it, it's really just a matter of not reinvesting the proceeds of the maturing securities. It will eventually just, you know, dissipate and naturally wind down to a earlier level. So I don't think it's a problem. I mean, monetary policy has a lot of tricky issues in it, but unwinding the balance sheet is not going to be a huge problem.
That's really good to hear from you.